Get out of the way. Derek Coleman yelled so the whole hall heard. Jerome Fisher kept walking, eyes down, bucket in hand. Derek stepped in front of him, full G, black belt tight. You stink like bleach. You disgust me. Jerome stopped, said nothing. Derek snatched the mop, threw it to the floor. Students watched. No one moved. Hey, fight me. Derek grinned wild. 1 round, it'll be hilarious. A janitor versus a black belt. Who wants to watch? Laughter erupted. Phones came out. Jerome picked up the mop quietly. I don't like fighting. I see you only know how to clean. He kicked the bucket. Dirty water splashed across the floor, but this mockery was about to end faster than anyone in that room could have imagined. Griffin's Martial Arts Academy sat at the end of a quiet strip mall in suburban Atlanta. Polished glass doors, trophies lining the window display. Inside it smelled like sweat and cedarwood. The main training hall stretched wide. Hardwood floors, mirrored walls, heavy bags hanging in the back corner. Championship banners covered the ceiling. Everyone carried the same name, Walter Griffin. Griffin's was no ordinary dojo. It trained champions, state titles, national rankings. Parents drove long distances to enroll their kids. Monthly tuition started at $400. The parking lot was full of SUVs and luxury sedans. And every night, after the last student left, one man stayed behind. Jerome Fisher. Jerome was 42, quiet. Broad-shouldered but soft-spoken. He arrived every evening just as the advanced class wrapped up. Gray polo, black work pants, steel toe boots, a mop bucket that squeaked with every step. He cleaned the mats, wiped the mirrors, emptied trash, restocked towels, locked the doors at midnight. Nobody talked to him. Nobody asked his name. To the students of Griffin's Academy, Jerome was furniture, a shadow that mopped. He earned $11.60 an hour. No benefits, no sick days. Half his paycheck went to Sunrise Hills, the care facility where his mother lived. She had early onset dementia. Some weeks Jerome ate rice and canned beans so the payment wouldn't bounce. He never complained, not once. But Jerome Fisher was not what he appeared to be. 8 years in the United States Army, 2 overseas deployments, and somewhere between foreign bases and military discipline. Jerome had trained under a man whose name was spoken with reverence in martial arts circles worldwide. 5th-degree black belt in Shorin-ryu karate. Not a hobby, a mastery earned through bleeding knuckles, broken ribs, and 6-hour sessions in jungle heat. Jerome never told anyone, never hung his certificates, never wore his belt. The reason was painful. During his last deployment, he intervened to protect a fellow soldier from a brutal hazing attack. He used his training. The attackers ended up hospitalized. The military sealed the record to protect the victim's identity, but Jerome carried the weight every day. The memory of how quickly his hands could end something. The fear that one day he might not stop. So he chose the mop. He chose silence. He chose invisible. And then there was Derek Coleman, 28, 2nd-degree black belt, 6'1", 200 pounds of protein shakes and ego. His father, Garrett Coleman, owned a chain of luxury car dealerships across Georgia. Garrett's donations kept Griffin's Academy running. New mats, equipment, a renovated locker room with his name on a brass plaque. Derek knew this. Everyone knew this. He walked through the dojo like he owned it. Technically, his family almost did. He trained 5 days a week, competed in regional tournaments, and won often enough to believe he was untouchable. But beneath the confidence was something brittle. His father called him soft. You've got every advantage, and you still can't be the best, Garrett once told him over dinner. That sentence lived in Derek's chest like a splinter. So Derek found someone to be better than, someone who couldn't fight back. Jerome. Every night after the students left, Jerome had a ritual. He would finish mopping, turn off the lights, and in the dark, empty hall, he would move. Kata, fluid, precise, devastating. His bare feet barely touched the floor. His strikes cut the air without sound. In the mirror, his reflection moved like water, smooth, controlled, lethal. No audience, no applause. Just Jerome and the ghost of everything he used to be. One night, the dojo manager, Loretta Vaughn, came back for forgotten keys. She pushed open the door and froze. The hall was dark, but she heard something. Sharp exhales, the whisper of feet on wood. She flipped the light. Jerome stood center mat, sweating, breathing hard, mop in hand, as if he'd been cleaning. "Working late?" she asked. "Just finishing up," he said. Loretta looked at the dry floor, then at the sweat on his forehead. She said nothing, but she didn't forget. It started one day. Derek was leading the advanced sparring class, 8 students on the mat. Jerome was in the back hallway restocking paper towels in the bathroom. Derek paused the drill. "Hold on," he said. He walked off the mat, bare feet slapping the hardwood, and stopped at the supply closet where Jerome was kneeling. "Hey, man, come here." Jerome stood slowly. "You need something?" Derek grabbed a sparring helmet from the shelf and shoved it into Jerome's chest. "Put it on. We need a body for drill." "I'm working," Jerome said. "You're working for us." Derek's voice dropped. "My dad pays your check, so when I say come to the mat, you come to the mat." The room went still. 8 students watched. Nobody spoke. Jerome set the helmet down. "I'll pass." Derek stepped closer. Close enough that Jerome could smell the mouthguard in his hand. "You don't get the pass. You're the help. Act like it." Jerome looked at him, calm, steady. Then he turned around and went back to restocking the towels. Derek stood there for seconds, his jaw tightened. Then he walked back to the mat, snatched a kicking pad, and threw it down the hallway. It bounced off Jerome's mop bucket with a loud crack. "Clean that up, too," Derek called without looking back. The students laughed. Not all of them, but enough. Jerome picked up the kicking pad, set it neatly against the wall, and kept working. That night, Derek sat at a high-top table in a downtown bar with 2 of his training buddies. 3 beers in, he was loud. "You should have seen his face," Derek said, grinning. "I told him to get on the mat, and he looked like he was about to cry." His friends laughed. The guy's pathetic. Big dude, too. Built like a linebacker, but soft. Derek tapped his temple. No fight in him. 0. He took a long sip. His smile faded for just a second because somewhere underneath the bravado, Derek heard his father's voice. "Soft. You're soft." He shook it off, ordered another round. Back at the dojo, Jerome stood alone in the dark training hall. His hands were shaking. He looked at the empty mat and whispered to himself, "Not yet." The next week, it got worse. Derek started filming Jerome. Not secretly, openly. He held his phone up like a tourist at a zoo, narrating while Jerome mopped the training hall floor. "Ladies and gentlemen, meet the dojo mascot." Derek's voice dripped with amusement. "Watch how he scrubs. Beautiful form. Truly elite technique. Somebody get this man a belt. A mop belt." He posted the clip on his social media. Caption: "Our janitor thinks he works at a dojo. Bro, you are the dojo entertainment." Laughing emojis. Likes poured in quickly. Jerome saw it that night, sitting on his apartment floor eating cold rice from a plastic container. He stared at the screen for seconds. Then he put the phone face down and finished his meal. The next day, Derek took it further. Jerome kept his cleaning supplies in a small closet near the back entrance. Mop heads, disinfectant, trash bags, rubber gloves. It wasn't much, but it was organized. Jerome kept everything in order. Military habit. When he opened the closet that evening, it was empty. Everything gone. He checked the hallway, the bathroom, the storage room. Nothing. He found his supplies minutes later, stuffed inside the dumpster behind the building. Mop heads soaked in old protein shake, rubber gloves shredded, a note taped to the trash bag in black marker, where your stuff belongs. Jerome pulled everything out, washed what he could, replaced what he couldn't out of his own pocket. Dollars he didn't have, he didn't report it. There was no one to report it to. Loretta Vaughn managed the schedule in the books, not the students, and the owner, Walter Griffin, hadn't been at the dojo in months. He was on the regional tournament circuit training fighters in other states. The dojo belonged to Derek now. At least that's how it felt. The next time, Derek escalated again. He walked into the break room during Jerome's short dinner break. Jerome was sitting alone at the small table in the corner, eating a sandwich he'd brought from home. Derek looked at him, then at the two students sitting at the other table. "Y'all are eating in here with him." Derek said it casually, like he was commenting on the weather. "It smells like floor cleaner. I can't even taste my food." The two students looked at each other. One of them picked up his plate and left. The other followed soon after. Jerome kept chewing, eyes on his sandwich, jaw tight. Derek leaned against the door frame and smiled. "See? Nobody wants to sit with the cleaning guy. Take a hint." That was the night Jerome almost broke. He was mopping the main hall when Derek came out of the locker room, still in his GI. He walked directly across the wet floor Jerome had just cleaned, leaving footprints on every tile. "Missed a spot?" Derek said without stopping. Jerome gripped the mop handle, his knuckles turned white. His shoulders shifted just slightly into a stance that hadn't surfaced in years. His breathing changed, shorter controlled combat breathing. Then he caught himself. He loosened his grip, relaxed his shoulders, and started mopping again. But his body had remembered, and that scared him more than Derek ever could. A new student noticed what no one else did. Selena Ramirez, 24, a graphic designer who joined Griffin's weeks ago for self-defense classes. She was quiet, observant, and uncomfortable with what she was seeing. She watched Derek throw a wet towel at Jerome's face during class. She watched Jerome catch it instinctively without flinching, one hand snapping up faster than anyone in the room could have reacted, and then pretend he'd simply reached for it. Selena's eyes narrowed. That catch wasn't normal. That was trained reflex. She said nothing, but she started paying closer attention. That weekend, Derek was at home scrolling through his phone. On impulse, he typed Jerome's name into a search engine. It took clicks to find it. United States Army, 8 years, 2 deployments, honorable discharge. Derek stared at the screen for a moment, just a moment. Something flickered in his expression. Not respect, recognition. The understanding that Jerome was not just some random guy with a mop. But instead of backing off, Derek leaned in. He walked into the dojo and announced it to the whole class. "Yo, did you guys know our janitor was in the army?" He said it like a punchline. 8 years of service and he ended up cleaning our floors. That's the American dream right there, folks. Students shifted, a few forced laughs. Selena looked at the ground. "I mean, what happened?" Derek continued pacing the mat. "You go overseas. You serve your country and you come back to mop toilets. Either the army broke him, or there wasn't much there to begin with." Jerome was in the hallway. He heard every word. His mop stopped moving for seconds. Then it started again. That evening, Derek called a meeting with the senior students. He stood in front of the mirror wall, arms crossed, grinning like a kid planning a prank. Next Saturday, we're doing a fun match, staff versus students. And by staff, I mean Jerome. A student named Tyler frowned. He's not going to agree to that. He doesn't need to agree, Derek said. He works here. We tell him to show up, he shows up. Simple. Tyler shook his head but said nothing. Derek pointed at the group. I want everyone here full G. Bring your phones. This is going to be content. He pulled out his phone and started a group chat. The message read, Saturday Jerome versus me. Dojo mascot gets a promotion. The laughing emojis piled up. Back in the hallway, Jerome finished his shift. He locked the front door, walked to his car, and sat in the dark for minutes. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. Someone had forwarded the group chat screenshot. Jerome read it twice. Then he set the phone on the passenger seat and closed his eyes. He knew what was coming, and for the first time in years, he didn't look away. One evening, Jerome sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the resignation letter he'd typed on his phone. 2 sentences, polite, clean, done. His thumb hovered over send. Then his phone rang. Sunrise Hills. His mother's evening call. Her voice was thin but steady. She asked about his day. He lied and said it was fine. She asked if the people at work treated him well. He paused too long. Jerome. Yes, ma'am. You're thinking about running from something. He didn't answer. Baby, you never ran from anything. Not boot camp, not overseas. Don't you start now. He closed his eyes, deleted the resignation letter. The next morning, Jerome made 2 moves. First, he found Selena Ramirez in the parking lot before class. He'd never spoken to her directly. He kept his voice low. Saturday, Derek's planning something on the mat. I need someone I can trust to record the whole thing, start to finish. No editing. Selena looked at him for a long moment. I'll be there. Second, he called Darius Caldwell, old army buddy, now a civil rights attorney in downtown Atlanta. Jerome explained the situation in under 2 minutes. Darius's response was immediate. Don't throw the first punch. Don't say anything threatening. And call me the second it's over. Jerome hung up. He didn't plan to fight. He planned to be ready. That Saturday afternoon. The dojo was packed. Word had spread through the group chat like gasoline. Every senior student showed up. A few beginners, too. Even some friends from outside the dojo who'd never stepped on a mat in their lives. Dozens of people crowded the training hall. Phones in hand, energy buzzing like a locker room before a championship bout. Derek stood in the center of the mat. Fresh GI belt retied twice for the camera. He was bouncing on his toes, rolling his neck, shadowboxing the air like he was warming up for a title fight. The crowd loved it. A few students clapped. Someone started a slow chant. Mop man, mop man, mop man. Jerome walked in through the back door. Work clothes, no gi, no belt, no gloves, just Jerome, looking like he'd come to fix a leaking faucet. Derek spotted him immediately. There he is, the main event. Laughter rippled through the room. Someone whistled. A phone flash went off. Come on, Jerome, get on the mat. Derek waved him over. Don't be scared. I'll go easy on you. 60%. Maybe 40. I am here to set up chairs for the youth class, Jerome said quietly. Chairs can wait. Derek's grin vanished. His voice flattened. Get on the mat, or do I need to call my dad and have a conversation about your employment? The room went silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Jerome stood still for seconds. He looked around the room. Dozens of faces, many phones recording. Selena Ramirez in the back corner, her phone steady, angle wide, exactly where he'd asked her to be. He stepped onto the mat. The crowd erupted, clapping, howling. Someone yelled, "Mop man versus the champ." Another voice added, "Somebody get this man a mop to fight with." Derek tossed him a sparring helmet. Jerome caught it with one hand. Quick, clean, without looking. He held it for a moment, then set it on the floor. "I don't need this," he said. Derek laughed. "Your funeral." They squared up. Derek in a textbook fighting stance, left foot forward, hands high, chin tucked. Jerome stood straight, arms at his sides, feet shoulder-width apart. To everyone watching, he looked like a man waiting for a bus. Derek didn't waste time. He threw a jab, fast, clean, aimed at Jerome's chin. Jerome moved his head inches to the left, the fist past his ear. He didn't raise his hands, didn't step back, just shifted like a tree bending in a breeze. Derek frowned, threw a cross harder this time. Jerome turned his torso slightly. The punch grazed his shoulder and went past. "No contact," the crowd murmured. Derek reset, threw a front kick fast, snapping aimed at Jerome's midsection. Jerome pivoted on his back foot. The kick hit nothing but air. His feet moved so smoothly they barely made a sound on the mat. Now the murmuring stopped. Something was wrong. The janitor wasn't getting hit. Derek's expression changed. The grin was gone. He came in with a three-punch combo, jab, cross, hook, fast, technical, the kind of combination that won him trophies in counties. Jerome slipped the jab, parried the cross with his forearm. The sound was a sharp crack that echoed off the mirrors and the hook he simply wasn't there for. He'd already moved. One step, no panic, no rush, no wasted motion. The room was dead silent now. Even the chanting had died. Derek's breathing changed, heavier, faster. His footwork got sloppy. Frustration leaked into every movement. He threw a spinning back kick. His showpiece move, the one that always landed in competition, the one his Instagram highlight reel opened with. Jerome read it before Derek's body even turned. He stepped inside the rotation so close that Derek's legs sailed behind him harmlessly. For a split second, Jerome was inches from Derek's face. Their eyes met. Derek saw something in Jerome's expression that he'd never seen before. Calm. Complete, terrifying calm. The kind of calm that comes from knowing exactly how this ends. Jerome stepped back. Still hadn't thrown a single strike. "Fight back!" Derek shouted. His voice cracked. Sweat dripped from his chin. "Stop running and fight!" Jerome said nothing. Derek charged. A wild overhand right, fueled by frustration, ego, and weeks of humiliating a man who turned out to be something else entirely. Jerome moved like water. He stepped offline, caught Derek's extended arm at the wrist and elbow, redirected the momentum, and executed a single throw. One technique, clean textbook, perfect. Derek's feet left the ground. For one frozen second, he was airborne. 200 pounds of black belt rotating through empty space. Then he hit the mat, flat on his back. The impact echoed through the hall like a thunderclap. The air left Derek's lungs in a single ugly gasp. He lay there staring at the ceiling, chest heaving, mouth open. He didn't get up. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Dozens of phones kept recording in absolute silence. Jerome stood over him, not gloating, not posing, just standing, breathing steady. He extended his hand down to Derek. Derek slapped it away. Jerome nodded once, stepped off the mat, and then the door opened. Walter Griffin walked into the training hall. Silver hair cropped short, a worn leather bag over his shoulder. He'd arrived earlier than expected. He stopped in the doorway. His eyes swept the room, the crowd, the phones. Derek flat on the mat, gasping for air, and Jerome standing barefoot at the edge, still in his work clothes. Griffin's bag slid off his shoulder and hit the floor with a heavy thud. He looked at Jerome. Jerome looked at him. And then Sensei Walter Griffin, multiple-time national champion, founder of the academy, the most respected martial artist in the state of Georgia, placed his feet together, straightened his back, and bowed. Not a nod, not a casual tilt of the head, a deep, full bow. The kind reserved for a master, the kind no one in this room had ever seen Griffin give to anyone. The room didn't breathe. "It's been a long time," Griffin said quietly. "Master Fisher." Dozens of phones captured the moment. The silence was so thick you could hear the air conditioning humming in the ceiling. Then someone in the back whispered, "What the hell?" Jerome bowed back. Slow, respectful, equal. Selena Ramirez uploaded the unedited footage to every platform she could reach. Title: Black Belt Dares Janitor to Fight. Sensei walks in and bows to him. By evening, views surged. Comments exploded, hashtags trended on platforms. Then came Respect the Unseen. Local stations picked it up, national blogs, sports channels. Jerome Fisher, the man nobody talked to, the shadow that mopped, was suddenly everywhere. By the next morning, his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Reporters, podcasters, old army buddies, messages from strangers, saying he inspired them. But not all the calls were friendly, because by afternoon, Derek Coleman's father had hired a lawyer. Garrett Coleman didn't waste time. Jerome Fisher was served with papers, assault and battery filed in County Superior Court. The plaintiff, Derek Coleman. The attorney, one of the most expensive litigation lawyers in Atlanta, the kind whose suits cost more than Jerome's car. Jerome sat in his apartment reading the document multiple times. His hands were steady. His stomach was not. He called Darius. "They're coming after me," Jerome said. "I know," Darius replied. "I saw the news." That was the second blow. Garrett Coleman hadn't just hired a lawyer. He'd hired a media consultant, a woman whose entire job was shaping public narratives before they reached a courtroom. And she was very good at her job. An edited clip appeared on local news channels, seconds long. It showed Jerome executing the throw, Derek airborne, Derek hitting the mat, Derek gasping on the floor. No context, no build-up, no minutes of Derek throwing punches first. Just a big man in work clothes slamming a younger man to the ground. Headlines read, "Violent Janitor Attacks Student at Local Dojo." Martial Arts Academy under fire after janitor assaults trainee. A talk radio host called Jerome a ticking time bomb disguised as a cleaning man. The comments sections split in half. The people who'd seen Selena's full video defended Jerome, but millions more had only seen the short edit. And seconds was enough. That man should be in jail. He could have killed that kid. Why was a janitor even allowed on the mat? Jerome stopped reading after the first 100 comments, but the damage was already spreading. The dojo's board of directors held an emergency meeting. Griffin's academy was technically run by a small board. Walter Griffin, senior instructors, and Garrett Coleman, who held an advisory seat thanks to years of generous donations. Garrett didn't attend the meeting. He didn't need to. His lawyer sent a letter instead. The message was clear. If the board didn't suspend Jerome immediately, the Coleman family would withdraw all financial support and pursue legal action against the academy itself. The board voted. Jerome was suspended without pay, effective immediately. Walter Griffin was the only dissenting vote. Jerome got the call. Loretta Vaughn delivered the news. Her voice was tight, like she was reading something she didn't believe. I'm sorry, Jerome. My hands are tied. I understand, Jerome said. He didn't argue. He hung up, sat on the edge of his bed, and stared at the wall. His mother's next payment was due soon. He had limited funds in his checking account. The world was watching Jerome Fisher, but nobody was helping him. Then Darius Caldwell went to work. He filed a motion to preserve all security camera footage from Griffin's Academy. He subpoenaed Selena Ramirez's unedited video. He requested Derek Coleman's complete disciplinary history at the dojo. And that's when the cracks started showing. The dojo's security system had cameras. Darius's team pulled the footage from the weeks leading up to the fight. The tapes showed everything. Derek throwing the mop, Derek kicking the bucket, Derek shoving the sparring helmet into Jerome's chest, Derek blocking the hallway, Derek throwing the kicking pad. Multiple incidents of harassment captured in high definition with timestamps. But it went deeper. Loretta Vaughn came forward. She sat across from Darius in his downtown office, hands folded, voice steady. She told them about the complaints. 3 written complaints filed against Derek Coleman. From former students, one from a part-time instructor who quit after Derek threatened him during a sparring session. Every single complaint had been quietly buried, filed, acknowledged, and never acted on. The reason was obvious. Each time a complaint surfaced, a donation followed. New mats after the first complaint, new locker rooms after the second, a renovated lobby after the third. The Coleman money didn't just support the dojo, it silenced it. Loretta slid a folder across the table, copies of all 3 complaints, plus the corresponding donation receipts. I kept everything, she said. I knew this day would come. Darius looked at the folder, then at Loretta. Why didn't you speak up before? Loretta's jaw tightened. Because I have kids and responsibilities. Same reason Jerome kept mopping. The case was building. Darius had the unedited video. He had the security footage. He had the complaint history. He had witness testimony. He had a pattern of bought silence. He filed a counterclaim, workplace harassment, hostile environment, and defamation through the distribution of a deliberately edited video. He also filed a motion to dismiss the assault charge, citing clear evidence of self-defense. For the first time in days, Jerome felt something other than dread. Then the opposing attorney played his card. It came during the preliminary hearing. He stood before the judge, adjusted his tie, and requested permission to introduce a sealed military record. Jerome's sealed military record. Darius objected immediately. The judge hesitated, but the attorney argued relevance. If the defendant had a history of violent confrontation, it spoke to character and pattern of behavior. The judge allowed it. Limited scope, but allowed. The attorney opened the file and read aloud. The defendant was involved in a physical altercation during his final deployment that resulted in the hospitalization of 2 fellow service members. The incident was deemed severe enough to warrant a sealed record. He paused, let the words hang in the courtroom. This is not the first time Jerome Fisher has used excessive force, and the last time the United States military had to bury it. The room shifted. Reporters scribbled. Camera shutters clicked. Jerome sat motionless, eyes forward. Darius's hand gripped his pen so hard it almost snapped. The headlines that night were devastating. Janitor's violent military past exposed in court. Sealed record reveals pattern of aggression. From hero to hazard, the Jerome Fisher story takes a dark turn. The Janitor Sensei hashtag was still trending, but now it was split. Half the comments said free Jerome. The other half said, lock him up. Jerome drove home in silence. He didn't turn on the radio. He didn't check his phone. He walked into his apartment, sat on the floor and pressed his back against the wall. Everything he'd buried, every memory, every nightmare, every reason he chose the mop over the mat, was now public. And the one thing that could save him was the truth about that sealed record. But the truth needed a witness, and that witness hadn't spoken in years. The mediation hearing was held one morning. Room in the county courthouse, fluorescent lights, a long oak table, no jury, no cameras, just a court-appointed mediator, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain and zero patience for theatrics. On one side sat Derek Coleman and his father Garrett, flanked by the attorney and a paralegal carrying binders. Garrett wore a charcoal suit. Derek sat beside him in a blazer, arms crossed, jaw clenched. He hadn't spoken publicly since the video went viral. On the other side sat Jerome Fisher, button-down shirt, clean slacks, hands folded on the table. Next to him, Darius Caldwell in a navy suit. No paralegal, no binders, just a single manila folder and a laptop. The mediator opened the session. "This is a mediation, not a trial, but I expect the same standard of honesty. Attorney, you may begin." The attorney stood, buttoned his jacket, and went straight for the throat. "Your Honor, the respondent, Jerome Fisher, is not the humble janitor the internet has made him out to be. He is a trained fighter with a documented history of violence." He clicked a remote. A screen lit up on the wall, the sealed military report, key phrases highlighted in yellow. During his final deployment, Mr. Fisher attacked 2 fellow service members with enough force to hospitalize both. The United States Army sealed this record, not to protect a victim, but to contain the damage. The attorney paused, looked at Jerome. This is a man who hides what he is. He hid it in the military. He hid it at the dojo. And when he was finally exposed, he responded with the same violence he's always carried. The room was still. Garrett Coleman leaned back in his chair, arms folded, a thin smile on his lips. The mediator turned to Darius. "Mr. Caldwell, your response." Darius didn't stand. He opened his laptop, angled the screen toward the judge, and pressed play. A face appeared on screen. A man in military dress uniform, ribbons on his chest. His name was Captain Marcus Hale. He spoke directly into the camera. His voice was steady, but his eyes were wet. "My name is Captain Marcus Hale, United States Army. In the deployment, I was the target of a hazing attack by 2 senior enlisted members of my unit. The attack was physical, it was racial, and it would have continued if Specialist Jerome Fisher had not intervened." He paused, swallowed. Jerome used only the force necessary to stop the assault. He did not initiate. He did not escalate beyond what was required. The 2 attackers were hospitalized because of the severity of their own actions, not because Jerome lost control. Captain Hale looked directly into the camera. "The record was sealed at my request to protect my identity, to protect my career, not because Jerome did anything wrong. Jerome Fisher saved my life that night, and I have carried the guilt of his silence for years." The video ended. The room was quiet. Garrett Coleman's smile was gone. Darius closed the laptop. Then he opened the manila folder. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter the following into the record." He laid out the documents one by one. Selena Ramirez's unedited video. Minutes of Derek Coleman throwing every punch first with Jerome, defending without a single offensive strike. Days of security camera footage from Griffin's Academy showing documented incidents of harassment by Derek Coleman against Jerome Fisher. Written complaints filed against Derek Coleman by former students and staff, all buried, all followed by donations from the Coleman family. A signed statement from Loretta Vaughan confirming the suppression of complaints and the financial pattern behind it. Written statements from current students who witnessed Derek's behavior, including some who admitted they laughed at the time and now regretted it. Darius spread the papers across the table like a hand of cards. The attorney wants to paint Jerome Fisher as a dangerous man hiding a violent past. The truth is simpler. Jerome Fisher is a man who has spent his entire life protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. He did it in the army. He did it on that mat. The only thing he ever hid was his own ability, because he was afraid of what people like Derek Coleman would force him to use it for. Darius looked at the attorney, then at Garrett. The Colemans didn't file this case because Derek was injured. Derek wasn't injured. He was embarrassed. An embarrassment is not a cause of action. The mediator removed her glasses. She turned to Garrett Coleman. Mr. Coleman, I've reviewed the footage, all of it. Your son threw the first strike, multiple strikes. The respondent defended himself with a single controlled technique. I've also reviewed the complaint history and the donation records. She paused. The pattern here is not violence by Mr. Fisher. The pattern is silence purchased by your family. Garrett's attorney leaned over and whispered something. Garrett's face tightened. He raised his hand. Your Honor, my client is prepared to discuss a private settlement. We're willing to withdraw the complaint in exchange for a mutual non-disclosure agreement. No. Jerome's voice was quiet, but it stopped the room. Everyone looked at him. It was the first word he'd spoken in the entire hearing. No settlement, Jerome said. No NDA. I want a public finding. Darius put his hand on Jerome's arm. Jerome looked at him. Darius nodded. My client requests a formal finding on the record, Darius said. Dismissal of all charges with prejudice and a formal notation of the harassment evidence for any future proceedings. The mediator looked at Jerome for a long moment. Then she looked at Garrett Coleman, whose jaw was locked so tight a vein pulsed in his temple. I'm granting the motion, she said. All claims against Jerome Fisher are dismissed with prejudice. The evidence of workplace harassment will be preserved and noted in the court record. I'm also referring the matter of the edited video to the district attorney's office for review of potential defamation. She closed her folder. Mr. Coleman, I'd strongly advise your family to step very carefully from this point forward. Garrett stood up without a word. Derek followed, eyes on the floor. The attorney packed his binders in silence. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Jerome sat at the table. He didn't move. His hands were still folded. His breathing was steady. Darius leaned over. You okay? Jerome looked at him. For the first time in weeks, his eyes were clear. Yeah, he said. I'm okay. But this ruling wasn't just about Jerome Fisher. It was about to change everything. The dojo, the community, and a movement that was only getting started. The news broke within hours. Every outlet that had run the edited clip now ran the correction. Headlines led with "Janitor cleared." Full footage reveals self-defense harassment pattern at local dojo. Coleman family under fire after court exposes buried complaints. The talk radio host who called Jerome a ticking time bomb issued an on-air apology. It wasn't enough, but it was something. The internet moved faster. Selena Ramirez reposted her original unedited video with a new caption. The full truth. Minutes, no cuts, no edits, no lies. Views surged. The comments section became a wall of support. Jerome Fisher is every person who ever got disrespected at work and had to swallow it. This man defended himself with one move. One. And they tried to destroy him for it. Protect Jerome Fisher at all costs. Hashtags trended nationally. At Griffin's Academy, the fallout was swift and decisive. The board held a second emergency meeting. This time, Walter Griffin ran it. He stood at the head of the table, arms folded, and spoke. "We took money to stay quiet. That ends today." The board voted unanimously. Derek Coleman was permanently expelled from the academy. A restraining order was filed, barring him from the premises. Every dollar the Coleman family had donated over the years, every mat, every piece of equipment, every plaque with Garrett's name on it, was returned or removed. Garrett Coleman's advisory seat on the board was dissolved. His brass nameplate in the locker room was unscrewed and placed in a box. Loretta Vaughn carried it to the dumpster herself. The dojo issued a public statement. Short, direct. No corporate language. Griffin's Martial Arts Academy failed Jerome Fisher. We allowed financial influence to override the safety and dignity of a member of our staff. We are committed to ensuring this never happens again. We owe Jerome not just an apology, but action. The action came the following week. Walter Griffin called Jerome into his office, the same office Jerome had mopped many times. Griffin sat behind his desk. Jerome stood in the doorway, unsure whether to sit. "Sit down, Jerome." Jerome sat. Griffin leaned forward. "I've known you for years. I watched you train. I watched you earn your 5th Dan. I watched you walk away from all of it because you thought your hands were a curse instead of a gift." He paused. "I should have found you sooner. I should have said something the day I hired you. That's on me." Jerome shook his head. "You gave me a job when no one else would. That was enough." "It wasn't," Griffin said. "And we both know it." He slid a folded GI across the desk. White, clean, a black belt resting on top. "I want you to teach here. Not as a janitor, as a co-instructor. Full-time benefits. Your name on the schedule." Jerome looked at the GI. He didn't touch it right away. "First class," Griffin continued, "is yours to design whatever you want." Jerome was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I want to teach people like me, janitors, cleaners, kitchen workers, night shift, people who get looked through every day. I want to give them what nobody gave me, the right to stand up without being afraid of what happens next." Griffin nodded. "Then that's what we do." The first class was held one morning. Free admission, open to the public. Jerome stood at the front of the mat in his GI for the first time in years. People showed up. Maintenance workers, hotel housekeepers, bus drivers, a cafeteria cook who drove to be there. Local news covered it. The cameras rolled as Jerome bowed to his students, and they bowed back. The segment aired that evening under the title, "The Invisible Belt: How a Janitor Became a Sensei." But the moment that broke the internet, the moment that made grown adults cry in their living rooms, happened at the end of the class. Jerome's phone was propped against the mirror, a video call, his mother watching from Sunrise Hills. Her memory was fading, but her eyes were sharp. She watched her son teach. She watched strangers bow to him. And when the class ended, she pressed her hand to the screen. "That's my boy," she whispered, tears running down her face. "That's my boy." Jerome turned to the phone. He smiled. And for the first time in a very long time, he didn't hide. Months later, Griffin's Martial Arts Academy looked different. The trophies were still in the window, the banners still hung from the ceiling, but next to them, a new banner. Simple black fabric, white letters. The Invisible Belt Program, founded by Jerome Fisher. 5th Dan. Every Saturday morning, the main hall filled with people who'd never set foot in a dojo before. Not athletes, not competitors, workers, the ones who clocked in before sunrise and clocked out after dark, the ones whose names nobody remembered. Jerome taught them the way he'd been taught. Discipline first, technique second, respect always. He didn't promise them trophies. He promised them something harder to win, the ability to stand in a room and not feel invisible. The program started with students. Numbers grew. Other dojos in Georgia had adopted the curriculum. A martial arts academy in Chicago reached out, then one in Houston, then Detroit. Jerome didn't charge a cent. Griffin covered the costs through the academy's budget. Local businesses donated equipment. A non-profit was formed to fund expansion. Darius Caldwell handled the paperwork pro bono. The movement had a name. It wasn't just a hashtag anymore. It was a program, a philosophy, a promise that the people society looked through deserved to feel powerful, too. Selena Ramirez documented everything. She quit her graphic design job and started filming full-time. Her short documentary, The Invisible Belt, premiered at a community film festival in Atlanta. Minutes long, no narration, just footage of Jerome's students learning to stand, to breathe, to strike, to bow. The final shot was a janitor in hospital scrubs throwing a perfect roundhouse kick, tears in her eyes. The film won Best Short Documentary. Streaming platforms requested distribution rights. Loretta Vaughn was promoted to assistant director of the academy. She implemented a new policy. All complaints filed at Griffin's would be reviewed by an independent panel. No exceptions. No donations could override the process. She kept a printed copy of the policy on her desk next to a framed photo of Jerome's first class. First, Walter Griffin stepped back from the tournament circuit. He spent more time at the dojo teaching alongside Jerome. Some afternoons, the two of them trained together after hours, the way they used to years ago, before life pulled them apart. No students, no cameras, just two old warriors moving through kata in the quiet. And Derek Coleman. Derek didn't disappear. He didn't move away. He enrolled in an anger management program. Weeks court recommended, but he stayed longer. He never made a public statement, never posted about it. But months after the hearing, a handwritten letter arrived at Griffin's academy. No return address, 2 sentences. I was wrong. I'm working on it. Loretta recognized the handwriting. She showed it to Jerome. He read it, folded it, and put it in his pocket. He never mentioned it again. Some wounds don't heal with apologies, but some people deserve credit for trying. Now, if you're still watching, I need you to do something. Think about the Jeromes in your life. The person at your office who cleans the floors after everyone leaves. The woman at your gym who wipes down the equipment. The man who stocks the shelves at your grocery store at midnight. You walk past them every day. Do you see them? Drop a comment below. Tell me about a time you were underestimated or a time you watched someone else get overlooked and wished you'd spoken up. I'll read every single one. If this story moved you, share it. Not for the algorithm, for the person in your life who needs to hear it today. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications, because stories like Jerome's happen every day and someone needs to tell them. Use the hashtag. Make it loud. Yo, like never judge someone by their job title. Period. The quietest person in the room might be the strongest one there. Respect costs you nothing, but ignoring people, that costs everything. Stand up for the invisible ones, because sometimes the people nobody notices are the ones carrying the heaviest weight.